Anyway, Zelda is an Afrikaner woman, born 1970, 29th October, by white standards poor, but legally privileged because she was white, because of a system called apartheid. Apartheid is a system that was introduced in the 1940s in South Africa that advocated for white supremacy and black oppression. It had a clear set of legislation that segregated whites and blacks in such a way that if you were white, you benefited from the economic opportunities in South Africa and the resources of the land. Anybody who wasn't white was black. Obvious, right? But black in that era meant coloreds were black, Indians were black, black people were black. For me, this was a learning point because I just thought black was if you are African, of African ethnicity. And I thought maybe colored people had it easier or Indians had it easier because of their complexion and the texture of their hair. But learning that black wasn't just black people, but Indians and coloreds was a very eye-opening experience. So basically, they were brought up to believe that black people weren't as clean as white people. They smelled differently. Their hair was also different, and it was taboo to touch a black person. So in my opinion, like touching a black person back then was like dipping your finger in poop. By the age of 13, Zelda says she was racist. By calculation, she should not have been Nelson Mandela's assistant. By 1992, apartheid ended, and Nelson Mandela was released from prison after 27 years. Whites thought they were in trouble, but little to their knowledge, Nelson Mandela showed no bitterness. In October 1994, Zelda began working in the presidential office. After Nelson Mandela's inauguration, President Nelson Mandela called the staff from the All Presidency and people who had served in the previous regime to a meeting allaying their fears of being fired or made redundant without discussion or choice in the matter. He asked people to stay and help build the new government of national unity, but also gave them the option of leaving if they wished to move on. Sadly, however, there was the issue of the pockets of racism, which was also eye-opening for me as I was reading in the book. I did not know this. It says it was resulting from the apartheid government, who had used the state pension fund to finance apartheid. So, the ANC had to raise funds to replenish the state pension fund and the task of delivering on their promises to South Africa when they came into power. Upon meeting Mr. Mandela for the first time, he extended his hand first and greeted her in Afrikaans, her home language, with a warm and sincere smile, and she cried because she was overwhelmed, feeling guilty that this kindly spoken man, with gentle eyes and generosity of spirit, spoke to her in her own language after her people had sent him to prison for 27 years. She went to sleep that night, not knowing where her thoughts and feelings were about this gentleman that her family and community perceived a terrorist. At the back of her mind, she felt like her days were numbered because she was Afrikaans, but consoled herself with the fact that Utata had only shown warmth to her thus far. As she became open to understanding politics and South African history, she noticed that even after apartheid had ended, her friends teased her about working for the enemy. There was a documentary filmed about the president's day-to-day life, and on that particular day, she was instructed to serve tea in his office during a meeting with Jay Naidu. When that particular documentary aired on TV, her parents were taken back by the reports of some of their friends who had decided to cut ties with him because their daughter served tea to a black man on national television. The entire Afrikaans community was not adapting well to the changes in South Africa, as interactions with black people still remained on a master-to-servant basis. Life for most whites continued unchanged in the same bubble of their materialistic comforts as before, and not all whites were making a concerted effort to change the country into a non-racial society. Sadly, many remained in their bubble today. Life for ordinary South Africans hasn't changed that much since 1994, although there has been a sense of optimism. Zelda struggled to marry her past and her present. While she writes, "I was a daughter of apartheid, yet I was supporting and serving the same man my Afrikaner compatriots warned me against." She later sought help and was referred to Reverend Beyers Naudé, Mbe, as he was fondly known. "I got you, Mbe." He urged her not to put so much pressure on herself by wanting to take responsibility for everyone around her and what apartheid did, and should come to peace with the fact that this journey was part of her awakening. Wow. Wow. South Africa needs more people like Zelda Legrandzi. Her story is phenomenal, a true metamorphosis of the mind and beliefs. In conclusion, if we can face our prejudice and be this candid about it and engage in open and explicit dialogues without killing each other or being intolerant of each other, then we can truly begin to heal as a country and unlearn racial stereotypes and understand why over 20 years post-apartheid, economic freedom and land exploration without compensation is key. Because I was born at the end of apartheid. I went to very diverse and interracial schools, and it was awesome. But I live in a shack because I too am still affected by the aftermath of the oppression of my predecessors. I am called previously disadvantaged on paper, and we take it lightly. And I heard people say that they don't understand why Born Free speak about apartheid because they weren't there. We speak about apartheid because economically we are still oppressed. I will say it again, 20 years after apartheid, I live in a shack. If you are offended by this insert, you have a problem with the truth and reality, because there is no malicious intent about it, but purely dissemination of information and an outcry and a call to unite, to heal, to face things as they are in order to know what we are dealing with so that we can grow and not just have optimism or Rainbow Nation goggles, but people are still suffering. I know land exploration and economic freedom is that pink, big, suede elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about. But I urge South Africans that in engaging in conversation regarding these key factors, let us not be intolerant, let us be honest, and let us take steps to healing. That's it from me. Comment, like, share, and subscribe. I would like to hear your comments and mostly your questions, and so that we can engage in this dialogue and we can expand so that I can make more videos based on your responses. And you guys can also tell me what else you'd like me to talk about. Ciao!